We have to not be influenced by no after no after no after no after no, looking for the occasional yes. We have to get ourselves on fire and keep ourselves on fire. And that's the hard part.
Well, hello there, and thank you for joining me on the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. My name is Sam, and today I'm going to be introducing you to another very special guest. But here's a question. What does it take to grow a successful network marketing business? What does it take to become a leader? What does it take to motivate yourself every single day and stay on track? Well, there is no one more qualified to talk to you about this than the amazing Richard Bliss Brooke, who has been a full-time network marketing leader, company owner, and high-performance coach since 1977. After building his very own team of 30,000 active sales leaders by the age of 28, he then went on to purchase a network marketing company in 1986. After many years in the industry, Richard decided that he was going to take everything he'd learned and apply it to help other people grow successful network marketing businesses just like him. He is now the author of Mach 2, How to Get Yourself and Keep Yourself Motivated for Life, and the 4-Year Career, The Promise of Network Marketing. Richard is authentic, he's real, he's relatable, he's super fun, but most importantly, he's got a really important message to share. This is an amazing man who's shared some of the biggest stages in personal development and network marketing, right alongside of people like Tony Robbins, John Maxwell, Sir Richard Branson, Les Brown, and even Pitbull. Anyway, with no further ado, I want to introduce you to the amazing Richard Bliss Brooke. Listen on in, grab yourself a cup of tea or coffee, but most importantly, grab yourself a pen and paper, because you are not going to want to miss out on some of the gold nuggets that Richard drops in this episode. Enjoy. Well, welcome back into the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. I'm your host, Sam Hind, and today I am joined by the amazing Richard Bliss Brooke. Welcome on in, Richard.
Thank you, Sam. Honored to be here.
I'm so excited to have you here. And Richard, we're just going to kick off with a really quick, really important question. Your title, you're an ontological coach. So can you tell our listeners what is, and honestly, tell me too, what's an ontological coach? We all want to know.
It's very sophisticated. It's deep. It's very complicated. I was reading once, few years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, a book by one of the early influencers of the work that I do. And for the first time ever, I saw the term ontological, and I didn't know what that meant. So I had to look it up, and in the context of what I was reading, it was obviously pretty obvious. And I kind of had this aha moment where I said, wow, that's actually what I do. And I've never had a good way of explaining what I do. So I adopted the word because it so precisely describes what I do. But I also adopted it because it begs the question, what is that?
So it makes people ask, right? It's a conversation starter.
You get to explain to people what ontological means. An ontological coach is a coach that coaches people on their state of being. Okay. So just think of it as, a simpler term would be a mood coach, right? But I don't think people would pay very much for a mood coach.
I don't know. I think a lot of men probably would.
Maybe, right?
I've got a wife that needs you, Richard.
What state of being is all about is just what is your energetic, spiritual beingness, and that changes depending on the context, the assignment, the challenge, the circumstances that are going on in life. And what creates our state of being is our story.
Yep.
So when I'm working with somebody and they of course, they have some kind of project they're trying to do, and they're not as capable as they want to be, or they wouldn't hire a coach. And so what I'm paying attention to is not so much what they're doing, but who they're being. And how I source who their being is, what's their story? What's the story, the vision that they have about what they're up to? And usually, if they're not doing as well as they want, they have a bad story. So I learn what the story is, and then I coach them on creating a new story, and that shifts their energetic state of being. And then they can always do whatever it is they need to do. We're not incapable of doing the things that need to be done from a intellectual or physical or time or even skill basis usually. What holds us back is we have this story that kind of puts us in procrastination or fear or funk mode. And so then we just avoid doing the actions. So it's not the actions that need coaching, it's that energetic state of being.
So I love that. And this is really fascinating for me. I know probably for lots of our listeners as well, but I just have to ask, what is the difference between state of being versus state of mind, or is there no difference?
Well, state of mind would be more precisely the story, because the story lives in the mind, and then the story influences our chemical makeup in our bodies. Our body is primarily chemicals, hormones, and that's what changes our mood. And it changes our blood pressure, it changes our breath rate, changes our physical strength. All of that is hormonal based, chemical based. So the story lives in the mind. Change the story, you change the chemical makeup of the body, which also is the mood. And then you are capable of doing anything you want to do.
Amazing. This begs so many questions, but I want to kind of stick to the track here because I want to come back to your experience in this industry. Now, you are passionately serving the direct selling industry. You've got a lot of experience in network marketing yourself. Can you share with us a little bit about your personal journey in network marketing?
Well, it's like a set of accidents that lead most of us to network marketing. So my set of accidents were, first of all, I hated school. I had a keen sense of awareness from an early age that what they were teaching me in school, based on how I wanted to live my life, was fairly useless information. And so I much preferred to go skiing or hunting or something as opposed to school. And I never studied and I never did homework. And I graduated high school with, in the States, what is called a 1.9 GPA, which is the minimum you need to get out. So I got out of high school, never even remotely thought about going to college. And in where I grew up, which was an agricultural community in California, if you don't go to a really good college, you're going to end up doing some sort of manual labor in ag. You'll end up back on the farm, back on the ranch, back on the dairy, or in some sort of food processing. I ended up in food processing, which was a chicken processing plant, the largest chicken processing plant in the world, which was 11 miles from where I grew up. Mm-hmm. And I went to work there and I actually loved it. I had a vision. I was going to spend the whole rest of my life there, my career. There was this guy named Rudy Marino who'd been there 37 years and he was about to retire. And so I was kind of modeling myself after him, and kind of crazy, right? So a very good friend of mine called me up one day, actually the same guy that got me the job at the chicken plant, but he'd since left. And he was working at the Ragu spaghetti sauce factory. And he said, "Hey, you need to come to a meeting. We're going to make a lot of money." And, oddly enough, I told him no, and I meant it. And, I use this as a teaching moment for people all the time. Why would somebody who's I was working like 60 hours a week to make $1,200 a month. And I would go through all sorts of gyrations politically and with my bosses and the structure of the chicken plant to maybe get a promotion worth $100 a month. And this guy, who was a good friend of mine, I knew him very well. I trusted him to not, steer me wrong. He said, "Come to a meeting. You're going to learn how to make $5,000 a month." And I said, "No, I don't want to go to a meeting to learn how to make $5,000 a month." Doesn't make any sense, right? But what was true is that kind of money scared me.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of money was outside my comfort zone. That kind of money sounded something's wrong with it. And then the idea of going to meetings with strangers, I was an introvert. I didn't want to do that. Anyway, suffice to say, I said no like 3 or 4 times. But then, hey, things change, right? So Foster Farms instituted this policy company-wide, 3,000 employees, that you could not advance further than I already was. I was at a place where I was teaching people how to cut up the chickens. You could not advance to the next position, which might be worth another $300 a month, without a 4-year college degree.
Oh, no.
Company-wide. So all of a sudden, my career at the chicken plant was over. So the next time I happened to see this guy, he didn't call me anymore, but I just happened to see him. He was celebrating his first commission in network marketing. And so I said, okay, show me. And, the numbers, the math, the presentation, it didn't make any sense to me at all. But I went to a few meetings, and what got me was the culture of the organization was all about recognition. It was all about seeing people, hearing people, and letting people know that they mattered. And I didn't learn for years and years later that that's really all people want. They want to be seen. They want to be heard. They want to matter. They want unconditional acceptance. And this organization gave me that. And they also gave me something I'd never even heard of before, which was personal development, transformational development. At that time, we called it positive mental attitude, right? Yeah. Read, Think, and Grow Rich, and How to Win Friends and Influence People. I'd never heard of any of that. And way more than the money, I gravitated toward an environment of growth. It was my journey of education. The traditional memorize answers to tests, I just wanted nothing to do with that. But this journey of learn how to navigate the world and other people and your own mindset better, I was very interested in that. And so I struggled mightily in network marketing. 2.5 years, I failed miserably. And then I figured it out. I built a team of 30,000 people. Wow. By the time I was 28. Not a typical result. Don't try this at home. Fully disclaimed. I was making $40,000 a month in 1981. And so what I tell people is, if you can do that, then you can do anything. And perhaps one of the reasons that I have been so resilient in my business career is if you can succeed in network marketing, you can do anything. It is a tough journey mentally. It's not the work is not tough. Work is easy. You can do the work in 15 minutes a day. You do the work every day for 15 minutes, you'll crush it. Mm-hmm. But getting your ontological state right to do that work every day, that's what takes some work.
So, Richard, why the transition from a successful network marketing business into becoming an ontological coach? I feel like there must have been an interesting story right there.
Longer than you have time for, probably, but see if I can abbreviate it. Well, 2 reasons. One, I owned 2 network marketing companies, one 35 years and one 10 years. The 10-year-old one I created because the 35-year-old one got flat and stale. And no matter how many times I put the paddles to it, I could not get a good heartbeat out of it. So I thought, I'll just start a new one. New products, new brand, new comp plan, new culture. And that worked great. But in the new company, long story short, the number one distributor was my wife. Okay. So before she was my wife, she joined the company. She became the number one distributor. We got married. So, and I've always worked from home. I'm like an original work from home CEO. So I've always had a company in an office, but I almost always just work from home wherever I was. So if you can imagine, I own the company, she's the number one distributor, and we're sharing a home. It doesn't work. Now, I could have terminated her or asked her to terminate, except you have to know my wife. That's just not something you suggest that she does after she's built this empire.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of it. Part of it was we wanted to move to Hawaii because that's where she's from. And that was too remote from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho to run these companies. And part of it was one of my coaching clients, because I've always had a coaching business, even though I own companies. One of my coaching clients was a distributor in a company that had product retention, long-term product retention, decade after decade, that was 4 times better than my company's. And I prided myself on long-term retention because that's where legacy generational income comes from. It doesn't come from the comp plan, doesn't come from the company, doesn't come from training. It comes from how many decades do people use these products?
Mm-hmm.
Like forever, because that's where your residual income comes from. And so when you combine those things, I was looking for an out.
Yep.
And the out was sell my companies to a company that is a much better future
Mm-hmm.
for the sales force than I was providing.
Mm-hmm.
So I sold my companies to a multi-billion-dollar company that had phenomenal product retention. And we moved to Hawaii and I became a coach.
I love it. Well, I'm curious. I know that you're really passionate about this industry, and I'm certainly getting that energy from you as you're speaking about it and what it's done for you and your family. But I'd love to know what your personal vision is for the industry moving forward and what the legacy is that you hope to leave.
Well, network marketing is first and foremost, is a model. It's a mathematical and set of rules that define how a product can be distributed and how the sales force can earn money. Mm-hmm. And what makes it unique as a model is everybody gets to recruit, which is kind of weird, right? But every customer, like if I make you a customer, Sam, 2 seconds later, you can start recruiting other customers, or you can start recruiting. Once you start doing that, you're a distributor. Whatever people call them, doesn't matter. But as soon as you start recruiting more customers, you're a distributor. And you can recruit customers and you can also recruit other distributors. And they can do the same thing. And I don't know if the inventors of network marketing realized what they did when they instituted that rule, but what it created was that exponential growth of the sales force and the customer base. 4 who get 4, who get 4, who get 4. I think it's, what is it, like 27 generations later, the entire planet is on your team, right? And of course, that will never happen and has never happened. But still, the sales force can grow exponentially. I know people that have 1 million people on their team. Mm-hmm. And that model I find to be just absolutely miraculous and magnificent as a wealth building tool. Because if I can get 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 customers on my team, in my business, and what that is that's like 1,000 individual sources of income. Every time a customer reorders, I make a little bit of money. One customer stops ordering, they're just 1 out of 1,000, doesn't impact my income. So you can spread your income out over thousands, hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of these little income centers. They're like little flickers of light. And of course, that's how important the product is, that people keep using the product over and over and over again, right? Mm-hmm. I have clients that are 3rd generation. In my company, I was paying somebody 3rd generation. I personally recruited a dentist who His goal was, I want to get out of dentistry. I want to build an income. I want to retire to Australia. He had studied the nutritional habits of the Aborigines, and he wanted to go back and live with them and study them more. So in about 5 years, he built a $10,000 a month income, and he retired, he and his wife, to Australia. 2 years later, he stroked out on the massage table. She moved back to the States. Mm-hmm. A year later, she passed away. They'd been married like 45 years.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
I started paying their daughter.
Wow.
She died of a heart attack in her 40s. So now I'm paying a 14-year-old granddaughter. I have clients in companies that are 40, 50, 60 years old that are third generation. That's the model opportunity.
Yep.
So what I love about network marketing is the model, the math, the wealth building aspect of it. Mm-hmm. I love the fact that in order to succeed at it, we have to grow. Mm-hmm. We have to bring our A game. You can't succeed in network marketing with your C game. You can't bring old, sloppy, mediocre habits. You can't try. I'm trying. No, there's no trying. There's either do or don't do. There's so many lessons that people have to learn to be successful in network marketing. Why is that? Why is it so hard? Well, because it has such a bad reputation, right? Everybody's already decided they don't ever want to do it. Those of us that signed up to be network marketers, whether you realize it or not, you signed up to sell something that would be the income option that everybody you know has already decided they're never, ever, ever going to do. And you signed up to convince them to do it. That's why you get so many no's, right?
Yeah.
So it's an opportunity that begs for us to get on our A game of personal development and stay on it, because we have to rise above the rejection. We have to not be influenced by no after no after no after no after no, looking for the occasional yes. We have to get ourselves on fire and keep ourselves on fire. And that's the hard part. Mm-hmm. Building a network is easy as long as you're on fire.
Yep.
And so what I love about network marketing is I love the math. I love the wealth building aspect. I love the personal development aspect. What I despise about network marketing is the way most people do it, which is desperate, hyping, cheesy, manipulative, lying.
Yes.
Promoting companies that don't have any chance at all of being here 50 years from now, but nobody cares. It's all about how much money can we make now.
Yep.
And so, 999 out of 1,000 companies go out of business, which all of this leads to the bad reputation.
Yeah.
So my mission as an ambassador of the model is to leave it far better off than I found it.
Yep.
And I know it's idealistic and may never happen, but hey, there is a place for most people on the planet to see network marketing as a plan B or plan C income option into their family. Find a product that you authentically love and just tell your story to other people and let people decide if they want to try it or not. No closing, no selling, just tell your story and let people make their own decision and build a second income.
Yep.
Because, $1,000 a month from a network marketing company, that's worth $200,000 or $300,000 invested. And yet you can create that kind of wealth in a year. Yet it will take you 10 years, maybe a lifetime, to save and invest $250,000. It's a beautiful wealth building model. And all you have to do is fall in love with the product authentically and tell your story and be honest and don't argue with people and don't make a nuisance of yourself. So that's my mission, is to teach people how to do it differently.
Yep. I love that. No big deal. Just be authentic, be passionate, All of those things. I love it. I actually put a post up yesterday, Richard, asking people for copies of spammy posts because we're doing a little bit of a campaign against this at the moment, reteaching people how to show up online, because I think social media has created a great big magnifying glass on that behavior, which of course we've seen for decades. You know, we all remember the day. Well, not all of us. Sorry, Gen Zs can tune out right now, but anybody my age and older can remember the day where you got invited to the dinner party and then halfway through the whiteboard got wheeled out and you realized that you weren't genuinely invited over. And that's kind of, people are doing that same behavior on social media now, you know, befriending you, and you think it's all genuine until all of a sudden into your inbox comes that message trying to sell you a business opportunity or some product you've never heard of. And I tell you what, Richard, Greg and I were having such a giggle looking at these messages last night that were coming through thick and fast into our inbox. And I just think, you know, what do people think sometimes? Do they really honestly think that this is going to be successful? But it really is that churn and burn mentality. Quickly get the sale now. Don't worry about that long-term impact it's going to have on their business, right? Which is super frustrating. But I wanted to ask you about self-motivation. In your book, Mark II, with your hair on fire, now we can see it behind you there, you talk a lot about mastering self-motivation and the key to that. And you share a number of different strategies. I'm going to ask you a really tough question. You're sitting next to someone on a plane. You got 5 minutes to really quickly have an impact on that person. They want to know, how can they grow their business? What strategy or strategies would you share with somebody to make an impact really quickly?
Well, different perhaps than sharing a strategy. If I can give you my honest answer, would be I wouldn't give them any strategies. I would ask them to tell me their story.
Okay. Yeah. And sorry. Yeah, you go.
Let me explain. I'll tell you a story to tell you the impact that you could have. So this was an article in Psychology Today 30 years ago. It was an exercise in what they called rapport building, but really got my attention because I was looking for a new way of selling, because I grew up pitching and closing and overcoming objections and features and benefits. And, you know, if I'm sitting next to a person on the airplane, I would be pitching, right? And closing and overcoming all their objections. And so I was looking for a new way because it didn't sit well with me. And so when I read this article, I went, wow, that's a new way. I'm going to try that. And it works brilliantly. So here was the test they did. The editor of Psychology Today flew from New York to Los Angeles. And the workshop was, he was to sit next to whoever his seatmate was, and he was to ask the seatmate curiosity-based questions. Who are you? What do you do for a living? Tell me about your family. Why are you going to LA? And not in an interrogation, but you got 5 or 6 hours. So just a casual conversation, and not all the time, but just a casual conversation. If the seatmate was asking him any questions, he was to answer the question succinctly, but not elaborate. Answer the question succinctly, not elaborate, and then at the appropriate time, ask the seatmate another question. So this went on all the way to LA. This is pre-TSA. So the Psychology Today crew was already in Los Angeles. They were at the gate. The two of them get off the plane. They let the editor pass by unnoticed. They intercept the seatmate and they ask him, hey, what did you think about the guy you flew out here with? And he said, the most interesting man I've ever met. So they asked him, what does he do for a living? Now, the article said, maybe they embellished, I don't know. But the article said he didn't really know. Something about something, but he didn't really know. Why was he coming to LA? He didn't know. Anything about his family? He didn't know. Now, I'm not saying the editor never told the seatmate his name, but when they asked him what was his name, I don't know. but he's the most interesting man I've ever met.
Yeah.
So how I heard that is, wow, this is how I can be interesting by being interested, which we've all heard that cliche.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the first thing I would do, Sam, if I had any time with somebody, is I would ask them to tell me their story. And that's the question I ask, which kind of throws people a little bit. So I would just ask people, what's your story?
Mm-hmm.
They're like, huh? What do you mean? Well, what's your story? Like, tell me your story. Where do you live? What do you do? Like, what's your story? And once people figure out what you're asking, I mean, they'll talk for hours.
Yeah.
And sometimes never shut up. So that's number one. Now, you asked for succinct strategies if you want to like maybe help somebody with their motivation.
Mm-hmm.
And strategy number one would be, I would just ask these questions. I wouldn't give a strategy. I would ask questions like, what are some of the most important things to you in life? Like, what do you value in life? Like, how important is family? Is family like really important to you? For some people, it's not, right? But most people it is. Okay, what is it about family that's important to you? Is your career important to you? Some people, it's just a job. Some people, they're super passionate. Is where you live important to you? Some people are living there because they have to, or it's close to grandkids, whatever, but they don't really have an affinity for the aina, as we call it here in Hawaii, which is the dirt, right? And what I'm getting at in these questions is asking people, what are your authentic core values? What's important to you? What I have found, the first step one in motivation, in self-motivation, is you and I have to pursue goals that are aligned with our authentic core values. Yeah. And we're very often pursuing goals that are in line with other people's values.
Yeah, 100%.
What authority figures in our lives, or maybe just society, says we should be doing. So, for example, a lot of people pursue wealth because they think they should. Mm-hmm. They think they should make more money. They should drive a nicer car. They should live in a nicer home. Where if you could get to the truth, like nobody had an opinion, just tell me the truth about you. Maybe the truth is, I don't care about any of that. I don't care how much money I make. I don't care what kind of home I live in. I just want to surf, right? So if that's the truth, mm-hmm. then we better set goals that are in alignment with surfing.
Yeah.
Because anything else is pushing a rock. It's just not going to work well. And so then once you kind of line people up with what's true, then the whole process of transformation and motivation is very simply changing your story. And that's maybe a little complicated for here, but it's, if your story is, well, I'd like to just spend every day surfing, but, I can't because people will have an opinion about that, or I won't make enough money, or I won't, whatever, right? There's some reason I can't do that. Then I would be coaching somebody on, okay, well, let's create a story about what if you could? What if there was a way? Like, what if there was a way to surf full time and make money? If we stand in the possibility, like we just stand there, even if we don't know the answer, my experience is, and neuroscience says, that the answers will start to come to us. Mm-hmm. We will open up that reticular activator and we'll start to see and hear answers. It's just the same reason I saw the article about the editor in Psychology Today is I was asking for an answer. Yeah. And I saw an answer where before I may have seen that article and not even paid any attention to it, or read it and it wouldn't have hit me like a ton of rocks. Yeah. So it's those things, like line yourself up authentically and then start looking for a different story. Use your creativity to find a different story.
I love that. And it's really funny that we're having this conversation because it's become quite clear over the last 6 to 12 months that the story is becoming the secret even behind social media and online strategy now. And we've seen a big shift in the type of content that's performing online in the last 6 to 12 months, going from that sort of entertainment value through to people really wanting to see authentic, real,
Yeah.
relatable content because of the rise of AI. There's the question all the time, what's real? What can
Right.
I trust? And so, Meta released their latest statistics, numbers, findings on all of the content that's been out there over the last quarter. And one of the findings was that the story was making a big comeback. So 12 months ago, they were saying, don't do lots of text in posts, keep everything really short and succinct. But now they're saying, no, people want the story, almost the blog post style content, because they know that's real. They can see the life in the post versus the technology behind it. And I want to just sort of touch on the story there for a sec, because I think that there is so much value in this. But you said something that I think is really interesting, that you can just change your story. Is it really that simple? I mean, if I've got a story, isn't that my story and that's just how it is and I can't change that? I think that's the mentality perhaps that a lot of people might have. I'm kind of stuck with that. That's who I am. What does changing a story look like? And is it really just that easy?
Well, do you want to do one?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, sure. Go for it. You know what? I'm up for a challenge.
So, what is something, Sam, that you have really wanted to do or accomplish for a long time, but it keeps avoiding you?
Ooh, that's a good one. Run a marathon.
Okay.
Mhm.
So, what's the story you have about running a marathon?
What's the story I have? Okay, so I was born with talipes, so my feet were bent up to my ankles. So for my whole life up until I was about 30 years old, I was of the belief that my body wasn't capable of running because it would just, your feet, your
Mhm.
ankles impact your knees, impact your hips, everything would kind of fall to
Right.
pieces. So
Yeah.
about 10 years ago, I started learning to run with my stepdad. Loved that process. Got literally to the day of running my first half marathon and complete lockdown. We all got grounded. We had the tickets. We were ready to hop on the plane and go. It was going to be the day I was going to run it. And it all got completely canned. And so I never actually ran my first half marathon, which
Okay.
was,
But what's the story that keeps you from running the full marathon now?
well, I need to be able to run a half marathon first, right? And I haven't ticked that box
Okay.
yet.
So, what's the story that keeps you from running the half marathon? You could run a half marathon tomorrow.
Yeah, well, I have to retrain up. I let myself lose
Okay.
my training, and
Okay. So, your story is you're not prepared.
I'm not prepared. I am not
Okay.
prepared. Hmm.
So, can you say the words after me? I am now fully prepared to run a half marathon.
I am now fully prepared to run a half marathon.
New story.
Wow. Okay. So what
So,
about when the reality doesn't feel like it fits?
oh, well, so let's create reality with it.
Hmm.
So, that is just a new story. That's
Yeah.
starting the new story, right?
Hmm.
We also have the old story, which is I'm not prepared. And you have all this history and
Hmm.
experience, which you have to, in order to embrace this concept, you have to embrace the idea that all of these stories are self fulfilling prophecies.
Hmm.
So, at one point, you decided, okay, I couldn't run the marathon because it got shut down, right?
Hmm.
The COVID shut the marathon down. But so then you decided I can't run a half marathon. But
Yeah.
yet you could have run a half marathon that same day because
Yeah.
you don't need the organization to run a half marathon. You could have run it on your own, right? With
100%.
a
Yeah.
mask if you
Hmm.
wanted to.
Yeah.
So, but you decided
Hmm.
you can't. You just decided. If I was there in that moment, Sam, as your coach, I
Yeah.
would say, wait a minute, there's no can't here. There's can. You
Yeah.
want to run a half marathon? Let's go. Let's do it
Yep.
now.
Hmm.
Right. But you decided I can't. And then you created I can't week after week, month after month, year after year, no training, no exercise. Now you have all this evidence. Oh, well, I haven't been training. I haven't been working out. I'm not ready. It just all piles on, but it all started with I can't, they won't let me.
Yep.
So now we're starting with I can, I'm fully prepared.
Yep.
So now what are the actions to get prepared? If you were going to start prepping tomorrow for a half marathon, what would you do tomorrow?
Build a training calendar and
Okay.
start
How
and
long
go
would
for my
that take
first
you?
run.
How long would that take you?
Maybe an hour.
Great. So look at your calendar. Do you have an hour somewhere tomorrow, anywhere?
Sure, I could find an hour.
Okay. So here's the next story. I am creating a training calendar. Say that.
I am creating a training calendar.
Tomorrow.
I love it. I love it.
So then I would coach you to say, I have an hour. And then past the training calendar, there's, okay, when do you start training? What does that look like? And then I would just ask you, can you? Will you? And the new story is a compilation of these declarations, these affirmations, these commitments. And then why a coach can be so valuable is the coach is going to ask you, if you're willing, by a timeline, like, will you tomorrow? And then check in with you tomorrow. Did you? And if you didn't, there's no beating you up. There's just simply, okay, so tomorrow for you is Wednesday. So I've just asked you, okay, will you Thursday? Will you Friday? Let's just keep recommitting until you get some traction. Now you have a new story that's building, and then we start to build evidence for the new story. So it gets real. It has reality to it. You keep practicing that story, rehearsing that story, acting on that story. And 3 months from now, Sam, you've run a couple of half marathons. You're ready to run a full marathon. Change your story, change your life.
I love that. So super powerful, and I'm really glad that we were able to clarify that too with something fairly easy, because I was having this very same conversation with our community just a couple of weeks ago around the start of this journey, because it started with the change of language. When I will elaborate on that. The day of that half marathon, it wasn't that I couldn't. I actually made the decision I wouldn't, because I wasn't going to do it in a non-official race. So instead of running the 21.5 kilometers, I ran 18 on that day, because I was like, I'm going to nearly do it just to show myself and everyone that I can, but I'm not going to do it because it's not the real race. But what I explained to people was the switching from my body can't run to I can do this was a change of language. And it wasn't I'm going to be a runner, because that's what I've been saying my whole life. I'm going to be a runner. I'm going to be a runner. It was I am a runner even before I was, because that change in language changed the decisions I made and the way I showed up. So, for example, it meant that instead of eating that piece of chocolate cake, I would have another glass of water or eat, a healthy salad. Or instead of going tomorrow, because, I'm going to be is always tomorrow, right? And that became I'm going to go for a run now versus I'm going to go for a run tomorrow, because tomorrow is when I'm going to become a runner. And I think it's like that even with social media or our businesses. So I really appreciate that. I think that's a really a simple way for us to totally change the way that we show up, change your story. It's as simple as that. I love it. And the actions that go with that.
If we realize that whatever story we have now, we just made up.
Yeah.
Something happened and we decided this will be my story. And then we manifested it.
Yep.
So if you can go back to, well, what happened that you actually created that story, that you decided that was the truth? If you can take people back there and identify that they just made it up, they could have made up something different.
Yep.
But they made up that, then that kind of gives people the freedom to understand, okay, well, if I made up the story I have now, I can make up a new story. And of course, you're making it up without evidence. But then the idea is, okay, let's go produce the evidence. And what you're talking about, Sam, with language is one of the downsides of old traditional goal setting. Goal setting is always about affirming what you're going to do in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Vision and manifestation and transformation work is all about affirming who you are now,
Yeah.
even if the evidence doesn't support it. Because once you start to affirm, I am now a marathoner, I'm a runner, you start to act different.
Yeah.
Affirming I'm going to be a runner, all that affirms is that you're not.
Yes, that's very true. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Super powerful. I'm sure that our listeners are loving this right now and taking a lot of notes. I hope that you guys are, because if, even as you're talking now, Richard, I'm thinking about some of the little stories and I think this is the thing, I may have been a little unaware of that I was spinning. And I think is a lot of this really about drawing awareness and attention to those stories that we don't even realize that we are repeating again and again and again. Like, I'm not good enough. I don't have the skills. I'm not worthy. I don't look as good on camera as that person. I'm not tech savvy. This is the one I hear all the time. I'm not tech savvy. I hate it when people say that, because you're on a webinar right now, aren't you? 10 years ago, you wouldn't have had a clue how to make your way to a webinar. You've got a mobile device in your hand that is more sophisticated and more powerful than the computers you grew up with. And I guarantee you're 100% self-taught. And yet you're sitting here telling me you're not tech savvy. The evidence says something else to me, but yet these are just stories we spin and we don't realize we do it, right?
Yeah. Change the story to I'm super tech savvy and then watch the magic unfold.
Yeah, I love that. So just really quickly, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out right now in network marketing? They might have heard the story you told earlier where you said that, the first couple of years you really struggled, but then you just figured it out. What and I know you said, don't do what I did, but and you didn't really elaborate on what that was. I was very curious, I've got to say, but I want to know if someone is sitting there right now going, I want to know what's the secret sauce that's going to help me not go through those 2, 3, 4 years of struggle, that's actually going to help me build something powerful right now that's going to get me the goals that I'm aiming for. What advice would you give them to get on the right track?
Well, one is, which is really not dealt with hardly at all in network marketing, but I think is just so critically important, is identify what are the stories that you have about network marketing. Like, how do you feel about it?
Yeah.
How do you feel about the whole idea of using your friends to make money? How do you feel about asserting yourself into the lives of your friends and contacts with your product and opportunity story? How do you actually feel about that? Yes, we understand you want to make money, and yes, you probably love a product, but do you love the model? Can you embrace the model? What is your story about the model? Because if your story is, I love this product, I love this company, I love my community, yes, I want to make money, but I really wish it wasn't network marketing. Okay, well, the but, everything that comes after the but kills everything that comes in front of it.
Yeah.
So if your story is, but I wish it wasn't, then you have issues about network marketing. That's your story. You have to change that. Yeah. You have to change your story from making money from your friends to, what if the product you educate your friend about changes their life? What about you and the person who introduced you to the product? Did you see that exchange as them using you to make money? Or did you see that as, oh my gosh, I'm so glad they had the courage to tell me their story? So your story could be, I have the courage to change people's lives by telling them my product story. Or your story can be, I'm making money using my friends. Yeah. Which story do you think will have you ring the bell? Yeah. So pay attention to your stories. And if you want to know if you have a bad story, all you have to do is look at your actions. Like, where are you avoiding doing what you need to do? Or where are you doing it with weakness and apology or fear? You have a bad story, change your story. The second thing I would tell you is find the best message that tells the story of your product and capture it on audio or video, preferably video. Like a question you could be asking your upline or the whole community is, who has the best product story on video that's compliant and is concise? Now, you may find that on Reels on social media or like somewhere, but the point is use a tool to tell the story instead of you. The big mistake that networkers make is they think what they're supposed to do is get in front of prospects and talk their way into a sale.
Yep.
And so if the prospect does say, okay, well, tell me about your product, most network marketers are still talking 20 minutes later.
Yes.
And they're non-compliant and they're unbelievable.
Yeah.
And the prospect doesn't see that as something they want to do. So this is another tip is everything you and I do, our marketplace, our prospects, the people that we may want to join our team, they have to see it as something they want to do and they can do. If they look at us and we have a PhD in our product, we can answer every question. We know every ingredient. We know everything it cures. We know everything about the product. And all you have to do is ask us and we'll tell you everything there is to know about it. Well, people look at you and they say, well, that's impressive. You're really impressive, but I can't do that. And so you just killed duplication. So what you'll end up with in your business is you may have lots of customers and you'll be really famous, but you will not have a team.
Yep.
Because in order to have a team, what we need to do and who we need to be, people need to see us and say, that's simple. Yep. I could do that. So if I send you a video and I say, hey, Sam, this is magic language, by the way, would you honor me by taking a look at this 2-minute video? Would you honor me by taking a look at this 2-minute video? If that's all I have to do to be successful, then people look at that and they go, well, I could do that. I don't have to be an expert. All I have to do is send a video. So use tools instead of expertise, and you'll get 10x the leverage from tools, and you'll get duplication. And manage your stories.
Yeah. Really, really powerful. I love that. And it does lead me to ask you the question as well, just really quickly about leadership. You talk a lot about leadership in your teachings. And of course, if you want to grow a successful business in this industry, then of course it means growing team, and being successful with growing team requires being a leader, even if that's one person. And this is one thing I want to point out. A lot of people go, oh, I'll become a good leader when I've got 20 people or 50 people or 100 people. They don't start with the one. But, what would you say the key qualities of a successful leader in network marketing? And is it something you innately have, or is it something that anyone can develop from scratch?
Anybody can become a leader, in fact. And leadership is often seen as domain specific. So if you have a family, first question I would ask you is, are you leading the family? Do you have children?
Yep.
Are you leading your children, or do they lead you? Now, I've seen some families where the kids lead the parents, right? But good parenting would demand that you are the leader. And I would ask you, maybe at work, at your career, are you a leader, or are you just like an invisible follower? Most of us are leaders in certain domains of our life, but oftentimes not other domains, because we equate leadership to either we have to, like we have to with our kids, maybe we have to at work, or we equate it with expertise. Like I can be a leader if I know more than everyone else.
Yeah.
And that doesn't have anything to do with leadership.
Yep.
Leadership is simply a few simple principles, starting with you can practice your leadership even if you don't have anyone on your team by first leading you.
Yeah.
So you have things you want to do. You have actions you know you need to take. So as a leader, Do you lead you to get those things done? Or do you let old stories lead you to not get them done?
Yeah.
Like, who's driving the bus?
Yep.
Is it a 3-year-old that is like a petulant, blaming drama, like woe is me, victim, trying, but I can't? Is that who's driving the bus? Or is your A game driving the bus? We all have A game. So to be a leader, what you need to do is call up your A game to drive the bus. Lead you, first of all. If you make promises to do certain things, or you know you need to do certain things, practice leading you to get those things done. Then when you have somebody that's watching you, number one thing in leadership is don't listen to what I say, watch my feet.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So are you being who you're asking other people to do?
Yeah.
Are you doing what you're asking other people to do? That's the most important thing in leadership. Say less, do more.
Yeah.
That's what inspires people. And, there's some more, the bigger your team, the more your vision about what are you building and why are you building it? And how does that contribute to people? And are you there to serve people? See them, hear them, make sure they matter. These are all leadership talents. But I think number one is walk the talk.
Yep. That is awesome, so powerful, and a really great spot for me to switch it up really quickly and move into my 4 favorite questions of any interview. So really quickly, Richard, your favorite book for our accelerator book list?
Top of mind book, Atomic Habits, James Clear.
Yep.
Not
great one.
Probably familiar to most people. I interviewed him for my podcast right before he launched the book. So I got him before he was famous. But what I love about Atomic Habits, I don't love the name of that book so much, but what I love about that book is what he speaks to is what I call compounding consistency.
Yeah.
Consistency is what network marketing and success loves. A lot of people like to say in network marketing that network marketing loves speed. It doesn't. Actually, what loves speed is Rex. And so, you can't be a snail's pace, right? But what's more important than speed is consistency.
Yeah.
And what Atomic Habits does is it really nails the compounding effect of if you do something every day, you don't have to have quantum leaps every day. It's just you're going to get a tiny bit better just because you're practicing.
Yeah.
And if you just practice every day, 365 days a year, you're going to compound some magnificent results.
Yeah. It's such an important thing. And I think if we think simply about this, think about all the things that you've learned to do over the years. People often say to me, I can't do that. It's too hard. When it comes to things like a reel or a Facebook Live or creating a social media strategy when they've never had one before. And the question I'll ask them is anything that you're currently doing in your life, was it easy when you first started doing it?
Right.
And so just think about walking or talking. I've got a 8-month-old daughter right now who is just learning to crawl, and I can see her starting to pull herself up on things. And we all know when she learns to walk, it isn't going to be, hey, I'm up and I'm off. It's going to be, I get up, I fall down, I get up, I fall down. And I consistently do that for a while until I kind of find some balance. And then I take a step and I stumble. And she'll keep doing that for a long time. But it's that process of what was hard is going to become easier and she'll get stronger. And I think it's the same, just like what you've said with anything that we do in our life, but particularly anything we do in our business too. And someone who came into business like myself, and I'm assuming you, with no business experience at all, it was pretty darn scary when we first entered into it. But things that are now easy were once really quite difficult and in most cases scary. So yeah, I agree. That's a brilliant book. It's one of my favorites. We've actually just finished reading that as a book club inside of our membership. So really good one. I love it. Next question. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why? We get some pretty hilarious answers here too, by the way. Very curious to know what you're going to say.
The superpower that I would choose would be that every word out of my mouth inspires love, inspiration, confidence, peace. Every word out of my mouth inspires that.
I love that. That's a new one. Haven't had that one, and I love it. That's going in with the favorites, I think. Brilliant. And your favorite quote, Richard?
That would probably be on the back of my business card.
By the way, I think if everyone in this world had that superpower, it would be a very different place.
Yeah, we would.
So we got
People stumble over the truth from time to time, but most pick themselves up and hurry through as though nothing happened.
And Winston Churchill. I love that. This is actually not a quote I've heard of before. This is on the back of your business card.
Mm.
I love it. Last but not least, if you could go back in time and say one thing to your past self, what would that be? Is it buy Zoom
I've made so many messes in my life. Wow. It would have to be around do less to impress and more to inspire.
Mm. Yep.
I have wasted millions of dollars and so much time and energy doing things to impress.
Yep.
Probably in my younger years, but still, even if it was the first 20 years, I packed 200 years worth of that nonsense into those 20 years.
Yep. That's a really, really good one, really powerful one. And I agree. I think, and you sort of touched on that before when you talked about values. I think that's one of the reasons we take on other people's values, right? Because we're trying to make other people happy. It's if this is my goal, I'll impress those people around me that I want to impress, or I'll make my loved ones proud of me versus what actually matters to me. Which reminds me of one of my favorite quotes: when the why becomes clear, the how becomes easy. And I think that's sort of, to me, sums up a part of what you said in there. But I think that's a great one. I think if we all did that a little bit more and did more to inspire and less to impress, again, this would be a very different industry and a very different world. So,
yeah.
Richard, just as we wrap up, want to ask if people would like to get hold of your book, can you just really quickly tell us a little about it? I'm on my second reading of this. I do love that this is actually a it's an interactive book. It's a fill it in as you go. I think this is great for anyone who wants to keep things interesting, because it's not just a pile of words.
Right.
It's very interactive. But do you want to just quickly share a little about your book, Mark II, with your hair on fire, with our listeners?
It is a compilation of a workshop that I haven't done many of them of late, but for decades I did hundreds of these one-day workshops about vision and self-motivation. And for many years, my students said, could you give us something to take home? We don't have anything to study. This is really before it was practical to film stuff. And so ironically, one of my students very assertively coached me to write the book.
Wow.
Yeah, very assertively. Like,
no, you really.
When will you start? When will you be finished? And she followed up. I mean, she made quite a nuisance of herself, but I guarantee you I'd never would have wrote the book.
Teacher. I love it.
Without her. So what the book is an exercise in discovering the truth that we make everything up.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts in our formative years. In our formative years, which is prenatally through perhaps about age 5, 6, or 7, what kids are trying to figure out is, what is this that I just entered into?
Yep.
We take for granted that infants understand this is food, this is a hot stove, this is a fall from 4 feet. This is, we take for granted that they understand the world. They don't understand any of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this makes no sense at all. Perhaps the only thing that makes sense is mothers nurturing and milk.
Yep.
Nothing else makes any sense.
Yep.
So they're not trying to figure out actually what these things are. What they're trying to figure out is, who are they?
Mm.
Who am I? How do I be safe? Am I safe
Mm-hmm.
in this environment? That's what kids are trying to figure out. And somewhere in that process, something happens. Just simple everyday things happen. And what oftentimes, most often, not always, but most often, kids decide as a result of that very commonplace event is they decide that they're not safe. They decide perhaps that they're not seen, that they're not worth what they feel like they want to be worth, that perhaps they're not loved.
Mm-hmm.
And this becomes the genesis of their self-esteem.
Yeah.
It is a story. And then they go about manifesting that story. They go one of two ways. They either succumb to the story and live a limited, small, not necessarily insignificant. They may still contribute to the world and have a family, and they do well. But compared to what they could do, they sell out because they don't think they have permission. And then there are other kids that rebel against that low self-esteem story, and they spend their life trying to prove that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And we see those very often as the highest achievers. Those are the ones who are highly competitive. They have to win every contest. Every time there's a contest, they say, I'm in, I'm going to win. And why? Because they have to win. They have to beat other people to have any feeling like they are enough.
Mm-hmm.
And what this book is about is having people understand, what is your story? What even happened that you created that story? And let's create a new story.
Yep.
Like, let's create a new story based on what your authentic core values are and what you'd like to do with your life. And who would you want to be if you didn't have anything to prove?
Yep.
Who would you want to be if you were 100% worthy and 100% loved and seen and accepted? Then what would you want to do? And then let's create a story for you to step into every day.
Yep.
So that you can absorb that new story and start to take on those actions and change your life. It is simply a change your story, change your life book. It's a series of exercises. It's also on Audible. But I would encourage people to get the book and then listen to the Audible, because the Audible doesn't have the exercises.
Yeah. Look, honestly, I think one of the things I love is that you go through, you do the exercise, and you can do it all in here. So I think that that's really powerful. But where can people get hold of these? And you've got a number of books, Richard. So where can they check your books out? Where can they get some copies from?
Amazon has the Audible and the printed book, and you can also get the printed book on my website, which is richardbrooke.com.
Awesome. And we'll pop all of that in the show notes for people as well. Richard, I just want to thank you so much for honoring us with your time today, your wisdom, and you have absolutely inspired me. So I'm sure that you've inspired all of our listeners as well. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Sam. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate immensely what you are doing for the social media space, teaching people how to do it in an honorable, authentic way, because it's a hugely powerful tool, and most people don't apply apply it correctly, but you have brilliant work there. Congratulations.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. And of course, thank you as well to our beautiful listeners for tuning in and spending this time with us this week. We also appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you on the podcast again next week. That's it from us. Bye for now, everyone. We'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us in this episode of the Direct Selling Accelerator podcast. If you love listening and you found that this was helpful for your direct selling business, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also check out the recommended video that's popped up on your screen right here. I look forward to seeing you again next time. Bye for now.